Hello, everyone. Welcome to the rollout. I am Linsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome. Today's episode is going to be very interesting because we had a little thing called E3 happen, and it went interesting.
Interesting.
It went interesting.
That's a good word for it. Yes.
I don't want to be unkind right out of the gate. So
No,
interesting. My word of choice. Linsay, I think you're a little bit more fair than I am on a lot of things. So
but we specifically, yes, and we specifically wanted to get some female voices in this conversation because, you know, well, because why? Because reasons, because video games and women and, you know, the thing that happens. But we have two amazing guests today. If you guys are, you know, longtime watchers of the rollout, you will recognize both of these ladies. We have Lizz Metcalf and Sarah Blandy joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
thank you.
Why don't you guys real quick just tell us a little about yourselves? Liz, let's start with you.
Yeah, my name's Liz, but I also go by Lizifer online. I am a TTRPG streamer, currently streaming with Meta Initiative and Initiative Order. But also in my free time, I make fantasy art and post my paintings online. So you can follow me at Instagram as well as on Twitch.
And Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Blandy. I'm a voiceover actor and a producer at Hexany Audio, where we make music and sounds for video games. And yeah, I'm also on Twitter. Sarah Blandy VO is my Twitter handle.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being here. So a lot happened over E3. I mean, you know, we obviously had game announcements and things like that. Sony, surprise, surprise, was not there again. And, you know, people are wondering about that they're trying to start their own convention. But there was a lot of articles that came out about the toxic nature of the Twitch chats and the, I don't know, just less than stimulating experience of the online E3 experience, and whether or not there's a place for E3 in the future, you know, especially with a lot of the other stuff that we have. You know, we have GDC and we have PAX, and, you know, what started out as like an industry convention is kind of not anymore. But yeah, let's just dive right in. Sarah, I know you've been to E3 many times over the years, and you know,
only but a handful, actually, just a handful.
True, yeah.
But yeah, no, I just want to preface this by saying that I love conventions. I mean, going to conventions is probably one of my favorite events to go to, whether it's you know, video game anime conventions or industry conventions, things of that nature, because, you know, it's that kind of the collective people that are into the same thing getting together, having a lot of fun with that thing, right? And so what I find interesting though about E3 is kind of how you know, the landscape has changed over, you know, the years. And so yeah, I'm very interested to hear what y'all think about it as well. But yeah.
Liz, any thoughts off the top of your head right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to E3 personally, like in person, but I have been very close to it over the years with many friends and loved ones in the gaming industry and participating in the E3. And it's definitely interesting to see it go from this coveted exclusive access event to industry folks only to now being more of like for instance, a BlizzCon, but for everything. So I definitely noticed a shift in how things are done, as well as just the culture that comes with it by making it more of a public event.
Yeah. Well, and then, yeah, let's dive right into that. So, you know, a few of the articles that came out about, you know, the digital E3 was the toxic Twitch chat that happened. For a gaming convention, I feel like I was a little surprised that they did not understand how Twitch works. Just a lack of moderators. I mean, there was so much that happened, but I mean, you know, there's reports of there was racism, there was sexism, there was just all this like just vitriol going on in these Twitch chats. And, you know, some of the panels ended up having to shut down the chat or turn it to, you know, emoji only. And Liz, to your point about the landscape shifting, you know, when it was industry only, as a woman, as a gamer, someone who works in the game industry, I always felt like perfectly welcome, no issues whatsoever. I didn't feel discriminated against at all. But once they started opening it up to the gamers, and now this online platform where people are able to be anonymous, we're seeing the same type of shit in gaming that women and minorities have been dealing with, well, for decades now. So I'm kind of very concerned that this happened at what is arguably the largest gaming convention in the world.
Oh man. There's a lot to unpack here.
Lots to unpack
There's a ton
there.
to unpack here. But the only reason I'm laughing is because when I see things like this happen in this way, so imagine an empty room, right? And now let's put 20 monkeys inside that room, okay? And then take a box of scissors, go in the center of the room and dump the scissors out on the floor, okay? And then you step back and see what happens. What do you think happens? The monkeys grab the scissors, they play around with it, people get hurt, and that's kind of what the Twitch chat was like during E3. It was a room full of, monkeys playing with scissors. That's what it was. And so that's why I laugh, is because, when you get a collective, these people are keyboard warriors where they're only so strong behind their keyboards, and they wouldn't normally probably act like this in the public eye, but because they are monkeys in an empty room with scissors, they will do that. That's literally the only way I can explain it. So there's
I was telling Linsay, can you imagine like if you're at a panel and then like it's time for the questioning, and then somebody just comes up to the microphone and just says any one of the lines that like
exactly
you saw, like, could you just imagine it? And like just like one of them just said like one word, and I'm not even gonna repeat it, but can you just imagine? And then they say it, and then they're just like standing there patiently waiting for the panel to respond.
And that is exactly my point. Like, these people are so strong behind their keyboards, but they would never do that probably, or at least it'd be less likely, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, it was predictable, and that's what.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
That's what kind of boggles my mind, is that this situation. Like, if you asked any gamer, any fan of gaming, like what they would think a Twitch chat for a gaming convention would look like this was predictable. So I don't understand how they didn't have more security around it, like more, just moderators, rules, it's weird. It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
it's like
interesting
Liz,
for sure. Yeah.
Like Liz, what do you think? Because I mean, obviously there are ways to control these things. Like, what do you think they were thinking? Were they not thinking?
Are we allowed to curse on this room?
Yes.
It was a shit show. Okay. But honestly, I don't know what they were thinking, because it's obvious, and they had panels on diversity and inclusion. And so it's like they're aware that it's a problem, but the fact that nothing was done to promote that in the chat, I'm going to make a strong point here, shows that it makes it feel more performative. Yeah. Like, look at how inclusive we are, but we're not even going to put the time to get the proper moderation for our chat to make women and trans folks and other other races and minority groups, marginalized folks, feel welcome in that environment.
Yeah. It's lip service almost.
Yeah, it's like, look what we're doing, but we're not even going to make it inclusive for our viewers to feel safe in the chat. It's super negligent, because it's not like this was a surprise that it's going to be online. We've had this whole thing affectionately known as the panini for the last year. Pandemic. Panini makes me feel better. But yeah, it really sucks to see, because as a female gamer, I like these things. These are communities I want to be a part of, and I've been playing like online games since as far as I can remember, like even in teenage years and whatnot.
Right.
And there's always been that you don't belong here sort of attitude. And but yeah, they could have definitely gotten the moderation under control. Another thing I'd like to point out too is, because I've done BlizzCon online, I've done the virtual ticket. There ain't no chat. There isn't a chat.
I was gonna bring that up.
Because of the fact that this is it's not like they're letting the audience in person yell and hurl things and talk to each other. You're focusing on the event. So it should have been a no-brainer. Like, what do you do in person? You don't have a chat. So
yeah, and like what's funny to me too is that when I feel like if people approach this like they would HR rules in the office. So like any office you work in, right, has a list of the HR rules and you know what the rules are, and you obviously follow those rules and provide the opportunity to keep those rules in place and for people to be able to follow them. So when you have something like the E3 chat and things that happen with that, it's like, why haven't they approached this like they would have approached their everyday work? Like, that's the thing that I don't understand. Why is it any different? You already know the rules. You literally go to work every day and you have to follow these rules, and you don't even want to like try and provide that to there. So here's the thing. Yes, there are challenges. And yes, I'm sure that there are many things that even, us four aren't aware that they have to deal with. But what I will say is, after streaming on my own channel and on Twitch and everything like that, you eliminate the opportunity. If you think that one person is going to not follow the rules, then you just eliminate it. You don't put the scissors in the room. You know what I mean? Like,
the monkeys can scream in their living room, but no one else has to listen to it.
Right. So like, you just don't put the box of scissors in the middle of the room. You take the chat away. Like, you take the chat away. And then
which they did in some of them. They shut it down halfway through or made it emoji only, but it's like,
and then they did the currency thing and didn't,
Right.
like they like almost eliminated it, and then spent the currency in order to say those things, because if the opportunity is there, they will take it. And so I like I said, I'm only laughing because I just find it to be negligent. Like you said, you put it very, very well, Liz. I think that it was just negligent. Like, you literally know what you have to do and you didn't do it.
Well, the other thing that really, I can't even say it surprised me. It didn't surprise me. The other thing is I kept waiting for either the E3 organizers or the studios or someone to like put out a very strongly worded statement, just being like, we don't agree with any of this. Shut it down. This toxic behavior. We've been trying, like, nobody did that. They're like, okay, we shut the chat off. But there's been no announcements. There's been no press releases saying we are so sorry for what happened to all the people who were offended at E3. We are sorry, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, is that, and that's kind of going back to what you said, Liz. It's like, well, were your panels on diversity and inclusivity just lip service? Did you feel like you had to do them? Do you really mean it?
Honestly, that's something I've been waiting for too, because it's not enough just to ignore the trolls.
Right.
You need to, as an organizations, shut it down and set the precedents and stand up for your marginalized gamers, like the people that buy and play your games. If you're, as well as promoting E3, if you're not doing that, then like, I mean, I know we're going to talk about like E3's longevity, but like, if you're not going to cater to this group of gamers that's growing and becoming stronger, then we're just not going to support you because we don't feel safe. But there needs to be a statement that condemns, like, from E3, because honestly, like, if you're in the chat and you get exposed to that toxicity and that hate, you wouldn't have been exposed to that if E3 didn't have that panel with the chat enabled. They exposed it to you. So it's definitely on the event organizers. Like, someone gets through security and is able to hurt people. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, granted, yes, that the person that chose to do that is terrible, but that's also on the organizer for failing to keep its attendees safe. I think the same goes in a virtual space. So I really hope they give a statement condemning it, as well as like apologizing for the countless people that had to be subjected to these awful things. Because I also guarantee you, which also, I'm sorry, not just guarantee, but I have had this happen. I've had those things thrown at me in my own chats before, or on like player versus player games online. Like super, it's
Oh, yeah.
sad to see. It's like that same toxicity coming from the general public. So
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, in
So
the
much.
larger gaming community as well, it seems to be a trend, I feel, that in the larger gaming community where it's more popular, or rather the reaction is to ignore and move on and not talk about it, rather than to acknowledge it, apologize, and or figure out a way to do better or move forward. And I mean, it all started I mean, like way before Gamergate, but like I feel like Gamergate is something you can really point to that as being like nothing was done about it. It didn't get enough attention like put on it to like showcase the seriousness of what was going on. And then that just allowed the behavior to continue and in many ways multiply, but also evolve into something like that broadens past the gaming community. Right. And, you know, that infects other communities at large. So it's nothing that we haven't seen before. It's just disappointing that the behavior to the reactions when this stuff happens has not changed.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A survey was conducted by who was this? Research 3 Insights and Lenovo, which this came out in May, that said 59% of women hide their gender while playing games online, specifically to avoid harassment. And 77% of them said they had experienced gender-specific discrimination while gaming, which is like, so to have someone think that this wasn't going to happen at a gaming convention, just blows my mind. Yeah. But you know, that kind of brings
I don't know.
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I don't know, like, as you know, with devs and creators and companies and stuff, like, I don't know exactly what or how deep their involvement goes with the gaming community, you know, like, is it because they just don't understand like the ropes and how it works? They just put out the product to the people they know that like the product, and that is where the relationship ends. Like, or if it is just like literally that insanely large amount of negligence on their part, and like either negligence or even cowardice of not wanting to upset that like large demographic that buys into all their, you know, that buys all their products. And I think it probably falls into a little column A, a little column B for some part, you know, for some of the parts, but it also, it's been so many years, like it's been decades, and I just don't see like, I feel like the change hasn't happened because they just don't care to do it.
It's hard.
Like,
it's hard, right? Because I can definitely see what you're saying, and I was just thinking, you know, when you're making the game and you're doing everything on your end, right? And you smack you know, the rating, right? You get a rating on your game and you put it out there. Are you going to change your game because you know that there's going to be negligent parents out there who are going to let their 5-year-old play Call of Duty, right? Like, it's almost like so the line is drawn, right? Like once I put the game out there, it's out of my mind, out of whatever. But now we're getting to, you know, Twitch, you know, right? We're trying to share things with the community and have the community give you live feedback back. And now we're in this like no man's land, right? So like before, point A here is where the game gets made and they toss it up over the wall to point B, right? And whatever happens on each side is point A's problem, point B's problem. Now with Twitch, you got this no man's land. The wall has been, taken down, and now everyone's, it's like, where is the line, right? So it's very interesting. And I do agree with what you're saying, but then I also think, okay, well, where is the line, and where does them caring start and end, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there does need to be obviously a clear divide from like when you can clock out and go home, after you're done putting in your 9 to 5 or like your 14-hour like crunch time. Like, there's got to be a point where it does end, and it really isn't up to like, the people who are, doing the design and stuff. Like more what I'm talking about is like that it falls
community managers.
It falls on the community managers. It falls on like the studio execs to, take a care in this, because like their employees, they don't have the time for that crap. Like they can just do what they're capable of doing. Like they don't have any sort of like say in how something is marketed or how something is presented, or even how the social media for the companies run. So it goes up the ladder, it goes up the chain of command, and those are the people that are responsible. And you just have to wonder, like, what is what is their demographic? Where do they come from? What is their background? Like, is it just because that they don't face these problems themselves that they aren't like more, they aren't pushed to care? Like, I don't know. And I feel like in some parts, I feel like either they're just negligent, or at best they have like good intentions. And good intentions doesn't necessarily lead to better things or to change.
I will shed some light on this situation too, because being close to the gaming industry as well as a woman in STEM, I have seen what has happened when bad decisions are made that are hurtful to marginalized folks. And I will say, community managers, you do such a fantastic job, and I know you are punching bags half the time. And are a lot of times hands are tied because of upper management, as well as executives, as well as the board of directors, and so on and so forth. I will say that the environment for the deciding forces definitely still needs to change. It is definitely a dude party still, and which means that there's a lot of blind spots in how certain decisions are going to affect marginalized groups. A particular situation that I will not use names, but there was a publisher that decided to do an AMA on their game, about their game, on a known white supremacist version of I think it was like 8chan or something.
Oh God. Oh no.
And it was bad. It was really bad.
Can't imagine why.
And it was like anti-Semitic. There was also illegal adult content on there. It was really bad.
Oh my God.
And so this decision was made. And the community manager, who I was close with, had to deal with all the fallout, which the community manager is a femme. And even they were just like, oh my God, what happened? Like, why? Like, and they're having to try to explain this. This is, they know the decision was bad. But someone above them made that call.
Right.
And oh my God, I would have jumped ship. I would have been like, deuces.
Yeah. And
oh my God.
And I know, like, still the gaming industry to work in is still a pretty harsh environment for women as well. And it's still an upwards battle, but there is some progress being made, but we're nowhere near where we should be. But with that said, crappy decisions that are hurtful get made, and then they get kind of brushed under the rug, just kind of like, oh, it's just part of the gaming community, you know, everyone gives each other crap and stuff. Oh, it's just trash talk. It's like, no, this is harassment, by the way.
Oh, it is.
This is harassment. And you need to decide if you're okay with harassment or if you're going to not tolerate it. Like, it's just a decision. But I think in those deciding roles, we got to have some changes on those voices. Like there's a lot of people not in the room that should be.
Right. Yeah. Usually always the community, like the community stuff always ends up like being affected by upper management because they're the ones that have the power to make the changes and because like in a lot of ways it's basically you're enforcing, you're enforcing, the laws, quote unquote, of your community, of your workplace. And, who better than to do that than the people in power, who can only do that, but the people in power. There is only so much, like if you operate on the ground level, and you're at the front lines and, you're just doing like, shadows or shading on character or background work or stuff like that. Like you can do your part as, and do that and do your part well. And until, the sun doesn't rise anymore. But at the end of the day, it comes back to that the people above you are the ones that can actually enact actual, solidifying change. Like grassroots is great, but it doesn't mean anything if the people above you don't support you.
Well, if grassroots was enough, Gamergate would have been the end of everything. Like we all thought shit was going to change after that. It's been how many years? And in 2019, Polygon and a bunch of other studios reported that like 2019 female representation at E3 was the worst it had ever been in its entire existence. 5% of games featured exclusively had a female protagonist, and like the amount of female presenters was like abysmal. So it's like, well, yeah, the grassroots isn't enough. Like, the four of us here can be screaming diversity left and right, but at the end of the day, no one's going to listen to us if the people above aren't listening to anybody.
So I do have a question, like along the lines, because we started out talking about the evolution of E3, how it has since been opened up to the public, to the community. But back when it was just an industry, it was for industry only. I did some work for Sony for a couple years ago when it was still industry only. And I mean, I have to say, like, it did feel more professional. It felt like people were there to work and, they can focus on being able to, play the games, listen to people, listen to presenters and all that kind of stuff and like, do their job. Whereas, if you open it up to the public, a certain sense, you're like, this kind of hampers me from doing my job. If I'm here and I'm supposed to write articles and I'm supposed to like collect all this data, like if I have to wait in line with like regular folks who are trying to like, also do a demo. But that's besides the point. I feel that to a certain extent, the toxic community is still there and it was still present. But it wasn't like it was in the Twitch chat. Like nobody was brave enough. Nobody is going to be talking about it openly, but you still feel it in that like corporate sense where, that there are these invisible barriers in places where, you don't step, you can't step into them / step outside of the box that you are kind of allotted. So I think that with the issue of E3, I would imagine that like the issues were already present. And just being able to open it up to the public, to people who are not used to that workplace environment, just kind of made it visible and magnified the issues that were already there.
Yeah, for sure. Oof.
So my question is, now that it is clear that there are still these issues. Where can E3 go from here? Do you think that, like, I mean, it's already on the decline, but do you think it's going to just be like another convention in the wind? Or do you think that they actually have a chance to maybe turn things around once they're allowed to do an in-person convention?
I mean, I definitely think so. The thing with E3 is it was super special because of the fact it was so exclusive.
Yeah.
But as soon as you remove that exclusivity, now you're competing with PAX West and East, and
Comic-Con
yeah, exactly, Gamescom, and then
GDC,
even
yeah.
like there's a lot now. Now it opens it up to, well, why do I have to go to this if there's going to be announcements at these other ones?
Yeah.
And just like you said, Genevieve, it's for people that are like reporting and reviewing games, it's a lot harder to contend with the general public. Also, another thing too is depending on what games are being featured is going to very much so control your audience.
Oh yeah.
And I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but that's okay. I remember when BlizzCon, Blizzard started added Overwatch, and Overwatch became super popular, as well as also too featuring Call of Duty stuff. So what happened was I started getting harassed more at the convention by people who were only there for shooter games. And this isn't saying all people who play shooter games are aggressive and harassy, but with
I don't
that
know, I'm
said,
pretty aggressive. No.
yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, no.
look at me. But there is that more kind of like, oh, noobzors, you suck kind of attitude with it, almost like PvP elitist. So I was wearing a Rexar costume and I was getting harassed by this guy who didn't understand what I was because he only plays Overwatch. So it's like,
Frustrating.
yes. So when you have fans from so many different areas coming together, there's going to be not only some clash, but you're going to get different, a mixed bag. But with that said, it removes that professionalism from the environment. Like the people going to these conventions were hired to work as teammates and work, understand how business is done and work together. Like if you're working at any of these companies, they're going to make sure you're not a psycho before they hire you. With the general public, there is nobody making sure that these people aren't psychos. So, or just terrible harassing people or predators or anything like that. So I think if E3 wants to be successful, they need to change also with the times. Like if you're going to have a panel, exactly. If you're going to have a panel on marginalization and whatnot, maybe you should do something like have people running the event be in those groups, like make those decisions, do something tangible and meaningful to make it a safer place for marginalized folks of any background.
Sarah, what about you? Thoughts?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to try and think of a solution for such a big problem.
Yeah.
But what I will say is so to make E3 better, I mean, the fact of the matter is that after going to so many conventions that I know and love, E3 is not my favorite convention. Not saying it's not the best or whatever, everyone has their own opinion, but to me, like if I'm going to go to a convention that's open to the public, I'm going to go to, a fan convention that I really like Anime Expo or like Dragon Con or Comic Con or things of the, conventions like that, because they have it down. And so, I mean, with E3, like I would agree with Liz, keep up, keep up. Like if you're going to do the fan convention thing, then have the rules set in place for fan conventions. And if you're gonna be online and do these chats and you don't want people to talk a certain way, eliminate the opportunity, like we just said. Make sure that you have enough moderators if you open up the chat. Make sure that you put the ban hammer down, honey, if people aren't gonna follow the rules. I mean, it's not rocket science.
No.
Like I said, I laugh because I just find it so ridiculous that these things didn't come up in a meeting, you know, and maybe they did, and maybe people just dropped the ball. Who knows? We really don't know what happened at the end of the day, but we can only just speculate, and perception's reality at this point. So, you know, I think like I do agree with a lot of what Liz said. Yeah.
Well, I think you nailed it, both of you. It's that E3 was a exclusive professional convention for years and years and years, and then literally only a few years ago they opened it up to gamers. So Comic-Con has been dealing with fans and this community for decades. They got it down. WonderCon, all the other, like you said, Sarah, all the fan conventions have been doing this for decades. They know how to handle people,
rules in
and
place.
they've had successful online conventions. Comic-Con went online and has done online conventions 2 years now. A lot of the other conventions were online only and didn't have any of these issues. It's like E3 is still like, oh, we're a professional convention, but we do have fans, so we don't actually know.
But we want to make money, so we need
to so like we don't know how to deal with the fans. And now the industry folks want nothing to do with us. Like Sony pulled out 2 years ago. Most of the people, I mean, Sarah, maybe you know you're the same. Most of the people I know who are in the industry, they're like, "Oh, E3 is not worth it."
Yeah, no.
If you want to network, if you want to network and advance your career in the game industry, you go to GDC, you go to PAX, you go to Game SoundCon. It's like E3 is not worth it. So we've now alienated the professionals, and it's a toxic environment for the gamers and everybody else. So it's like, well, now what do you have?
Right. Yeah.
Clusterfuck. I feel like maybe
A bunch of dudes.
a bunch of dudes.
I just
and I know many dudes, you know, and we all do. Like there are so many great people in this industry, and what's really unfortunate is something like a Twitch chat sullying the experience because of negligence or bad decisions or just lack of decisions from these teams of people who are great. And so it's like I said, that's why I laugh, and that's why I just shake my head, because it's like, you guys know better, and so many other conventions know better too. And so
it's
what people will say mean things online. Who would do that?
When they're anonymous and have no consequences?
Who would do
this happen?
No.
Yeah, I know. Shocker, right? When Linsay sent me the article about it, talking about it, I read it, and I was like, what? The internet is saying bad things in an open chat? Say it ain't so.
Everyone's surprised.
Shocked.
I just love like the litany of solutions that they tried to do before like completely
just shutting it down. They're like, well, maybe we can fix this. Emojis only. And I'm like,
do you know how many things you can do with emojis? And it could be so much worse than actual words in a lot of cases.
I mean,
because
go ahead.
I was going to say, because the visual connection works a lot faster than being able to read things. So, that message gets spread a lot.
There's no language barrier with that either.
Exactly.
Now we're going global.
Yes.
Global with the offensive behavior. Oh,
the organizers haven't been clearly harassed by emojis before, and it shows. It shows.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh,
crazy.
So... now that we've talked about the bad and the ugly, was there some good? Did we see anything that they presented that were like, oh yes, that I'm excited? Because it was a bit lackluster as far as the things that they announced. Like the fact that Plague Tale is getting a sequel. That's kind of cool. Like there were some interesting things that they rolled out, but then of course Sony didn't show up, like, you know.
Yeah, well, they've got their own
for a bit
now. Yeah, I mean, Bethesda had some announcements, obviously, you know, with their new vampire game and Starfield, which, you know, but those have been talked about already, you know, so they weren't like super new. And Nintendo had some, you know, some fun things that seemed to come out, but
they didn't really drop a big bomb on anybody, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the big thing was Xbox revealing like a lot of now exclusive titles that they have, because now that they've acquired Bethesda, it's like, and the rest is ZeniMax. So it's like, oh man, Xbox is they got a lot now that they can, and you know, with their Game Pass subscription, it's like, yeah, that's going to be interesting. And I know you guys also, you do a lot of online gaming, you know, because obviously with Steam and everything, it's like, well, does it seem like, you know, for a game convention, does it seem like and I even hate to say indie games, because a lot of these Steam games are not, like, they had budgets that were pretty decent. It's like, does it seem like there's maybe too much of a focus on the big studios? I mean, Comic-Con, they've made the same argument too. They're like, oh, when Hollywood got involved with Comic-Con, it kind of degraded the, you know, the convention experience for a lot of fans. You know, the smaller guys felt pushed out. I mean, do you think that, you know, there's not enough focus on some of these indie games or the online games or the Steam community or that?
Yes, I would definitely say that, because I mean, here's my life. Just a quick glimpse into my life is I play these AAA games, I beat them, and then I'm like, okay, what next? And then the next like major release is I have to wait like a year. But with that said, I found some really great indie games in the meantime, but it's taken so much hunting and there's like not a lot of marketing around that. And I think it's not really giving a spotlight to indie games in or smaller publishers in E3 really hurts with studios' success and just those studios wanting to break into maybe a AAA space at some point and growing. But like, for instance, Lost Ember, I don't know if anyone's ever played that, but that game made me cry a bunch. It's super cool because you get to be an animal. I'm sorry, not just an animal. You can be any animal. I was a damn hummingbird. So,
I love that.
but it was just such a beautiful game with an amazing score. Well done. One of the best games I've ever played. And they did all their own marketing, which they spent money on their marketing, that's the only reason I found out about it. But other than that, it's just very like hunting around on Steam, like sifting through player reviews to find cool games that you can play. When, let's say, you know, you're out of AAA games to play and you're bored and you want something to do. But I think it's overall better for the whole ecosystem of the industry by featuring a multitude of publishers, not just the big names. Give other publishers a chance to shine, as well as also too, like with Sony leaving, you're going to need publishers to want to be at your show.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you know, give at least some of that limelight and spotlight to some of the smaller ones, then like there's only so many big AAA gaming studios out there. If you have all of them already or whatnot, then diversify.
Yeah. Sarah?
It's interesting. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of torn about that.
Because they do have the Indiecade, to be fair. Like E3 does have a little Indiecade, but
right. I think, to be honest with you, I don't look at E3 announcements or things for indie games per se. Like I feel like it's always been kind of the stage for the AAA, and like if at least this is just how I presently feel, or like, you know, where I go to for my information. Not saying that they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying for information purposes only. I go to E3 news for AAA game stuff. I go to PAX, you know, and during that time for indie game stuff. But that's just how I get my information, because PAX does a better job at featuring indie games. Not to say that they shouldn't at E3. I think it'd be great. I love indie games. I mean, there's so many good indie games, like Liz had mentioned too. But yeah, I guess just me personally, I haven't thought too much about indie games during E3, just because it's kind of like I go to Vaughn's for groceries for this type of groceries. I go to Whole Foods for those type of groceries. That's just kind of how it feels.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But it's not to say that they shouldn't, you know.
Right.
If they all had it at one grocery store, that would save me a trip in LA, and that would be great. But yeah, so
sometimes you have to hunt.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so I guess, you know, just to kind of wrap everything up, you know, based on the experiences that have happened at E3 for the past couple years, you know, opening it up to the gamers, lack of female representation, and and then the vitriol that happened this year, it's like, where do they go from here? If, you know, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but yeah, what are if you guys were the organizers of E3, like what do you think are the steps that they could take to, like you said, Sarah, keep up with the times, not, keep having some of these issues that have been happening for years and years, and make it, Liz, like you said, a safe, inclusive space where people don't feel threatened?
Yeah. So, oh boy, I have a lot to say here. Sorry. But as an article pointed out, when AOC did her stream, it was way larger viewer base than E3 was.
Yep.
It was set up like 24 hours in advance, but somehow the chat was pretty much, it was moderated very well.
Yeah.
So it's doable. So step one would be, take a page out of that playbook, because that had way less planning time-wise available, and still it was more inclusive and positive than E3 was as an event.
And that's political.
Yeah, that's way more charged than E3. But I think E3 would definitely benefit from a DEI consultant or consulting, like get people who aren't in the room currently in the room. So these decisions can be looked at from all angles, instead of just, with a couple views of how this could be bad or how this couldn't be bad, because then it just turns into personal experience as well. I've never harassed people in chat, so I'm sure chat will behave themselves. No. But I think, yeah, definitely having the people making decisions be more inclusive, but as well as giving more options from publishers, like more publishers having maybe more of a stronger light. Because as Sarah said, like how I get my information, whenever I see like reports on E3, it's all the AAA, like it's all the big names. Like I almost never see indie games unless I'm actually specifically searching for that. But diversify that, as well as, honestly, if they were to like make an industry and then like press and stuff, I wouldn't really be that upset, because that was part of the magic of E3.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Sarah,
Sarah,
that's my 2 cents.
That's your 2 cents. Sarah, what about you?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Liz. Like, get the people in the room that need to be in the room to make these decisions. And I mean, if you go to Twitch chat settings, you can literally type in all the words that are not allowed in the chat. And you could put, booba on that list, guys. You could have literally put that word there and it couldn't have gone out into the world. I mean, there are just such simple things that could have been done just to look at it like in the weeds at the moment. But yeah, get people specialized in moderating Twitch chat to moderate your friggin' Twitch chat. Number one. Number two, get the higher level now. Looking at organizations like that to be in the room to make those decisions. Yes. And, I think that the game industry in general has done such a better job lately in diversifying their characters in game. And I know we've talked about this before, like, and now it's like, okay, we did that part and that's great. We built that foundation. Now, can we get the community managers in cultivating that kind of mentality, in that no man's land we were talking about, right? So, I mean, there's I know I'm talking in very vague and broad, maybe not vague, but broad terms, but if there's a way to just kind of try and get that no man's land to just be friendly for everybody, that'd be great. But yeah, it's a hard thing to say what is the solution. I mean, there are so many solutions for sure.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take diverse teams. I mean, there's so many things. Sorry, I know I can rabbit hole with this kind of question, but
No.
but yeah, I do agree with what Liz is saying though, for sure. Get the people in the room to make the decisions, I would say would be probably the biggest and best way to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well then,
Ooh.
on that note, I believe all of us would be available for consulting purposes, E3, as well as the many other amazing women in the gaming community. Just throwing that out there. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I guess to anyone that's had these awful words slung at them or has ever felt not welcome in the gaming space, I just want to say that it's not true. Like you belong here. Do what you love. Be a nerd. Uh, chase your fandom. I can't tell you how many times that I would not get picked for like raids and WoW because like I was the girl. And now I'm like main tank for almost every raid. For those of you who speak World of Warcraft, but make your space and speak up, and speak up if you can. Obviously it can be tough, but you are welcome here. You are a nerd, you are a gamer, and yeah, kick some ass.
I love that so much.
Yeah,
All
I love
right.
that too.
Yeah, Sarah, anything else you want to add?
Oh yeah, I love the gaming community, and I hope to always create a space that's safe for everybody, and kind of piggybacking off of Liz, if you see something, say something. If someone's being inappropriate, call them out on it and don't take it. I mean, either you can stay and have fun, or you can go leave and be a troll elsewhere out of this space. So I mean, that's all I got to say about it. If you see something, say something, and that's going to at least help, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you guys so much for being here again. This was amazing. We always love talking video games with fierce, amazing women, and you two are some of the best that we know. So thank you so much. Genevieve, how can they find more of us?
Well, if you like what you see here or in any of our other videos, please press that like button, subscribe, ring that bell so that you get notifications every time that we upload a new video. We upload every Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time. We are always very happy to hear what you have to say, so please write us down some things in the comments if you guys experienced E3, or if you guys have some suggestions for the showrunners of E3. Just we'd love to hear them. So please type us a comment in the chat. We can also you can also find us in podcast form on any podcast platform of your choosing if you guys are commuting or just want to listen to us while you're working out or whatever. Yeah. We can find us there too. And please follow Culture Slate as well. Thank you so much for joining us. This was an amazing discussion, doing a deep dive into a very serious topic. Wow. So thank you, Liz and Sarah, for being with us for that. All right. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.
We will see you next week.
Yes, we will. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.